Lieutenant Alice Warren was having what she considered a perfectly normal day when she accidentally shocked the entire galactic community. The mining outpost on asteroid KX-249 had already reported suspicious activity twice this week, so she wasn't surprised when the emergency alarm sounded. She calmly finished her coffee, her third cup of the hour, and headed to the security station. 3 ships with disabled identification beacons were approaching the outpost. Alice recognized the attack pattern immediately. Space pirates looking for an easy score. She smiled slightly. They clearly hadn't gotten the memo about human security officers. The first explosion rocked the station just as Alice reached the weapons locker. The pirates had taken out the main defense turret, exactly as she expected. She grabbed her standard-issue pistol, then paused. The station's artificial gravity was failing. Perfect. What Alice didn't know was that her every move was being watched by the Galactic Council's First Contact Observation Team. The HFY scientists had been secretly monitoring the outpost for weeks, studying human behavior patterns. They were about to get much more than they bargained for. The pirates, a mix of Sarth and Valerian outcasts, breached the station's outer hull using plasma cutters. They expected to find panicked miners running for escape pods. Instead, they found darkness and silence. The lead pirate activated his environmental scanner, then froze. According to the readings, the temperature in the station had dropped to levels that should have killed any living being. The artificial gravity was fluctuating wildly. Alice had vented most of the station's atmosphere and shut down the gravity generators. She moved through the darkness in her sealed suit, using the walls and ceiling as easily as the floor. The pirates' heavy armor, designed for straight firefights, made them clumsy in zero gravity. The first pirate didn't even see her coming. Alice used a maintenance tool as a makeshift grappling hook, swinging around a corner and firing 2 precise shots that disabled his suit's propulsion system. He spun helplessly in the void, cursing in 3 different languages. The observation team watched in stunned silence as the lone human security officer systematically dismantled the pirate crew. She used the environment itself as a weapon: sudden gravity changes, pressure differences, even the station's cooling systems. When she ran out of ammunition, she improvised weapons from maintenance tools. When a pirate cornered her, she used her suit's oxygen tank as a makeshift thruster to tackle him in zero gravity. Within 20 minutes, all 7 pirates were either unconscious or trapped in disabled suits. Alice had already called for a patrol ship to pick them up. She was more concerned about getting the station's systems back online before the next shift arrived. The coffee maker in the break room used main power, after all. The HFY observers finally broke their silence. Their preliminary report to the Galactic Council caused an immediate uproar. The human had survived conditions that should have been lethal: extreme cold, radiation exposure, rapid pressure changes. She had demonstrated strength and spatial awareness that should have been impossible in variable gravity. Most shocking of all, her vital signs had remained steady throughout the entire encounter. Her heart rate had barely elevated. When the Council's official first contact team arrived 3 days later, they found Alice filing her weekly security report. She had listed the incident as a minor security breach and requested maintenance check the backup gravity generators. The Council representatives, after much diplomatic preparation, asked her about the incident. Alice looked confused. "Standard zero combat training," she explained, shrugging. "They teach it in basic, though I had to improvise a bit since our defense turret was down. Speaking of which, could you approve the repair request? The paperwork's been sitting in the system for 2 days." The Council's preliminary assessment of Earth as a Class 12 Deathworld was transmitted that evening. The classification caused immediate controversy. No sapient species had ever evolved on anything above Class 9. When they learned that Alice considered the incident routine, several council members demanded a recount. Surely there had been some mistake. There hadn't been. This was just the beginning of the galaxy's introduction to humanity. and Earth was about to redefine everything they thought they knew about survival. Dr. Peter Martinez stretched and took another sip of his steaming hot coffee as the alien scientists stared at him in horror. The beverage in his cup was hot enough to cause serious burns in most species, and here he was drinking it casually. But that wasn't what truly disturbed them. It was the fact that he was willingly consuming a known neurotoxin. "You mean to tell us," the lead X theory researcher said slowly, "that humans intentionally drink caffeine to alter their mental state, a substance that evolved specifically to kill insects?" Peter nodded, dunking a cookie into his coffee. "We even give it to children, though usually in smaller doses, like in chocolate." He paused, noting their expressions. "Oh right, chocolate has theobromine too, another toxic alkaloid." The research team hurriedly updated their notes. They had been studying human physiology for 3 weeks now, and each day brought new surprises. Yesterday they had learned about human bone density and how it increased under stress, a property that violated several supposedly universal laws of biology. "Could you explain again about your skeletal reinforcement?" asked a younger Angsthury, her scales shifting to a pale green of confusion. "You're saying that deliberately damaging your bones makes them stronger?" Peter pulled up a holographic display showing human bone structure. "Exactly. When we exercise and put stress on our bones, they develop microfractures. As these heal, the bones become denser and stronger. It's why astronauts have to exercise in space. Without regular stress, our bones would weaken." One of the alien scientists fainted. Their medical officer quickly assured the others that it was just from shock, not from exposure to the various toxins humans apparently carried around naturally. The team had originally come to study human physical capabilities after Lieutenant Warren's incident with the pirates. They expected to find genetic engineering or technological enhancement. Instead, they found something far more terrifying: natural evolution. "And this adaptation to poisons?" another researcher asked. "It extends to your food as well?" Peter grinned, pulling out a small red pepper from his lunchbox. "This is what we call a jalapeno. It contains capsaicin, a chemical that triggers pain receptors. We eat them for fun." He took a bite, and the researcher's instruments went crazy measuring his physiological response. "Your pain receptors are activating," one shouted in alarm. "You're experiencing the equivalent of minor chemical burns." "Yeah, this one's pretty mild," Peter said, still chewing. "I've got some ghost peppers at home that are much spicier." The lead researcher had to sit down. Her species had evolved on a carefully controlled paradise world, where harmful substances had been eliminated millions of years ago. The idea of deliberately seeking out pain for pleasure was beyond comprehension. As the day continued, Peter explained other routine human activities that the aliens found increasingly disturbing. How humans could survive with broken bones, as long as they were set properly. How they could lose significant amounts of blood and recover. How they could survive in temperatures that would freeze or boil most species. The final straw came when Peter explained about human children. "They put everything in their mouths," he said. "It's how they build immune resistance. Their bodies learn to fight off harmful substances." "You mean to tell us," the lead researcher said faintly, "that human young deliberately expose themselves to toxins as a learning strategy?" "Well, not deliberately at first. But yeah, that's why we have such strong immune systems. Constant exposure to threats makes us stronger." That evening, the research team sent their findings to the Galactic Council. Their report included a recommendation to reclassify humans as not just resistant to toxic environments, but actively thriving on challenges that would kill other species. They also requested hazard pay for continuing the study. After all, they had just learned that humans regularly engaged in something called competitive eating, and none of them felt prepared to witness that level of voluntary self-endangerment. Staff Sergeant Kate Mitchell stood in the arena, doing simple stretches while her opponent, the Xarth champion Groknar, roared and smashed his fists against his armored chest. The contrast between them couldn't have been more striking. Groknar stood nearly 9 feet tall, his scaled body rippling with muscles. Kate, at 5'8", looked tiny in comparison. The Xarth had challenged humanity to their traditional death matches after hearing about Lieutenant Warren's space battle. They hadn't believed the stories about human capabilities. To them, humans looked soft, weak, and poorly defended. No claws, no armor plates, not even basic natural weapons. They had chosen what they thought would be an easy victory. Last chance to surrender, small one. Groknar growled through the translator. Submit now and live as our slave. Kate finished her hamstring stretch and smiled. No thanks. But how about we make this interesting? No weapons, just hand-to-hand combat. The alien audience erupted in laughter. Even Groknar's mandibles twitched in amusement. The Xarth were famous for their natural weapons. Razor-sharp claws, armored scales, and powerful tails. Facing one unarmed was considered suicide. Agreed, Groknar said, dropping his ceremonial blade. Your death will be painful. The match began. Groknar charged forward, expecting to end the fight in seconds. Kate simply wasn't there when his claws slashed through the air. She had stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him past. The alien champion spun around, faster than something his size should move. But Kate was already circling, keeping her distance, bouncing lightly on her toes. The first minute passed, then 5, then 10. Groknar's attacks became increasingly frustrated as Kate continued to dodge. Stand and fight, he roared, his tail smashing a crater in the arena floor. Why? Kate asked, not even breathing hard. You're doing all the work for me. The alien observers began to notice something strange. While Groknar's movements were becoming slower, more labored, Kate looked fresh. She wasn't just avoiding his attacks. She was making him work for every move, using his own strength against him. 20 minutes into the fight, Groknar was panting heavily. His species was built for explosive power, not endurance. Kate had barely broken a sweat. She had switched from purely defensive movements to quick, precise strikes at his joints and softer scales. What are you doing? Groknar gasped, after 30 minutes of combat. It's called persistence hunting, Kate explained, landing another quick jab. My ancestors used to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We're not the strongest species on Earth, but we can outlast almost anything. The revelation hit the alien audience like a thunderbolt. This wasn't just combat. It was a demonstration of why humans were different. While other species relied on overwhelming force or natural weapons, humans had evolved to just keep going. At the 40-minute mark, Groknar could barely stand. His mighty muscles trembled with fatigue. His armored scales were slick with sweat. Kate finally moved in close. Ready to submit? She asked kindly. The proud warrior tried one last desperate swing. Kate caught his arm, used his own weight against him, and brought him crashing to the ground with a simple hip throw. Groknar lay there, gasping, unable to rise. I submit, he managed to say. The arena fell silent. Kate helped her defeated opponent to his feet, supporting his weight easily. Good match, she said. You've got amazing power. Want to get some water? Later, in the medical bay, Groknar learned more shocking facts about humans. How they could repair torn muscles to become stronger. How their hearts could maintain elevated output for hours. How their sweat glands let them regulate temperature during extended activity, something most species couldn't do. The Xarth warriors, renowned across the galaxy for their fighting prowess, had to face an uncomfortable truth. They had evolved to be living weapons, but humans had evolved to be living survivors. In any extended conflict, the advantage would always be with the species that could just keep going. That evening, the Xarth did something unprecedented. They requested an alliance with humanity. After all, only fools would choose to fight against creatures who treated marathon running as a recreational activity. Commander John Phillips stared at the red warning lights flashing across his ship's control panel. The emergency landing on Nexus 6 had been rough, but they were alive. The same couldn't be said for their engines. Status report. He called out to his crew of 4. They had been mapping unexplored systems when a solar flare had knocked out their main systems. "We're alive," said Laura Chen, the ship's engineer, pulling herself up from her crash sheet. "But the engines are completely fried. We're stuck here until rescue comes." The rescue would take at least 2 weeks to reach them. That was the problem. Nexus 6 was classified as a Class 11 death world, considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. The atmosphere was thin and full of volcanic gases. The temperature swung between burning hot during the day and freezing at night. The gravity was 1.4 times Earth normal. The aliens said no one could survive here for more than a few hours, Sam Baker, their science officer, said as he checked the external sensors. The Galactic Council evacuated their research station last year after losing 3 teams. John looked at his crew: Laura Chen, Sam Baker, Rita Patel, and Frank Cooper. All of them were trained for extreme environments, but this would push their limits. He activated their emergency beacon and opened the survival gear lockers. "Well," he said, pulling out environment suits, "let's prove them wrong." The first challenge came within hours. The thin atmosphere meant they had to wear breathing masks whenever they went outside. The high gravity made every movement a workout. But humans had evolved in varying gravity conditions on Earth. From swimming in water to climbing mountains, their bodies adapted. 3 days in, the Council's rescue coordinator called them on emergency channels. "You must stay in your ship," she insisted, her translator barely keeping up with her panicked clicks. "The surface temperature will kill you." John was outside at that moment, setting up solar panels in the baking heat. "It's only about 130 degrees Fahrenheit," he replied. "Hot, yes, but we have deserts like this on Earth. We're rotating shifts, so no one stays out too long." There was a long silence from the Council's side. By the end of the first week, the crew had not just survived, they had set up a working base. They used the ship's damaged hull as shelter, created a water recycling system, and even started mapping the surrounding terrain. The volcanic gases in the air were similar to those found in some Earth mines, so their filtration systems could handle it. "The real problem," Rita said during their evening meal, "is that I'm getting too used to the gravity. I'm going to feel so light when we get back." The Council observers couldn't believe their sensor readings. The humans were sleeping through temperature swings that should have been fatal. They were working in gravity that should have crushed their bones. They were breathing air that should have poisoned them. Most shocking of all, the humans were adapting. By the 10th day, they needed their breathing masks less often. Their muscles had already adjusted to the gravity. They had even started naming the local rock formations. When the rescue ship arrived after 2 weeks, they found the crew playing cards in their makeshift base. All 5 humans were healthy, if a bit bored. They had not just survived. They had made the hostile planet their temporary home. The Council's scientific committee spent months studying the mission logs. The humans had displayed impossible adaptation speeds, while other species needed generations of genetic engineering to survive new environments. Humans could adjust within days. "It's just like camping," John tried to explain to the bewildered alien scientists during his debriefing. Sure, it was a bit rough, but humans used to live like that all the time. "We're built to adapt." The Council added a new note to humanity's file. "Warning: environmental adaptation rates exceed all known biological limits. Species can survive and function in conditions that qualify as fatal for 90% of known spacefaring races. Recommend immediate reclassification of human survival capabilities." They also quietly noted that humans classified 2 weeks of survival on a death world as camping. The implications were, to say the least, disturbing. Dr. Mary Stevens couldn't help but smile as she watched the alien scientists back away from her microscope in horror. She had just shown them a simple sample of human skin cells and their natural bacteria. The Galactic Council chamber had erupted into chaos. "You mean to tell us," said the lead Valerian scientist, his crystalline form flickering with distress, "that these organisms live on you constantly, and you let them?" "Not just on us," Mary explained, changing the slide. "They live inside us too, billions of them. They help us digest food, fight off diseases, and keep us healthy. We call it our microbiome." The chamber's automatic sanitization systems activated as several council members began panic responses. The idea of willingly hosting other organisms was completely foreign to them. Most spacefaring races had evolved in carefully controlled environments where harmful microbes had been eliminated millennia ago. "But look at this," Mary continued, showing them another slide. "This is what we call the common cold virus. Most humans catch it several times during their childhood. It helps build our immune system." A NXtheory representative raised a trembling appendage. "You deliberately expose your young to infectious agents as a learning process." "Well, not deliberately. It just happens. Children play in dirt, put things in their mouths, interact with other children. Each exposure helps their immune system learn and grow stronger." The council's medical team had to treat 3 representatives for shock. Mary moved on to her next slides, showing the incredible variety of Earth's microscopic life. She explained how humans had evolved alongside these organisms, engaged in a constant evolutionary arms race. While other species had tried to eliminate threats, humans had adapted to live with them. "And this," she said, pulling up another image, "is what happens when a human gets a small cut." The image showed white blood cells attacking bacteria. Our bodies immediately begin fighting any invasion. We have multiple layers of defense, skin barriers, immune responses, fever reactions. "Fever?" asked a curious young Ktarth scientist. "You mean your bodies deliberately increase their temperature?" "Yes. Many harmful organisms can't survive at higher temperatures, so our bodies heat up to kill them. We call it burning out an infection." The revelation that humans could deliberately alter their body temperature to kill invaders caused another stir in the chamber. The concept of internal biological warfare was both fascinating and terrifying to the galactic community. Mary then showed them something even more shocking: yogurt. "This is a food we make by deliberately cultivating certain bacteria. We eat them alive because they're good for our digestive system." The council's chief medical officer had to leave the room. "But the most interesting part," Mary continued, seemingly oblivious to the distress she was causing, "is how this has affected our evolution. Humans can adapt to new microscopic environments faster than any known species. Our immune systems are constantly learning, evolving, and remembering new threats." She pulled up her final slides, showing human medical history. "We've survived plagues that killed millions, adapted to new diseases, and developed immunities to countless threats. Each challenge made us stronger. Now we can use this understanding to help us colonize new worlds." The Galactic Council took an emergency recess to process this information. The idea that humans not only survived alongside countless microscopic organisms, but actually used them for their benefit was revolutionary. It explained so much about human resilience, but it also raised disturbing questions. Late that night, the Council added a new classification to humanity's file: microscopic symbiosis level, maximum. Species has evolved beyond normal parameters of microorganism interaction. Note: humans classify most normal bacterial exposure levels as mostly harmless, and consider the consumption of living microorganisms to be normal dietary practice. They also issued an immediate warning to all medical facilities treating humans: do not attempt to sterilize human patients or their environments. Their health apparently depends on maintaining relationships with organisms we consider deadly pathogens. Mary left the council chamber that evening, looking forward to her dinner, a nice probiotic yogurt with fresh fruit. She had decided not to tell them about human gut bacteria just yet. Some revelations could wait for another day. Officer Daniel Carter sat in the Galactic Council's cultural exchange room, surrounded by alien diplomats who were becoming increasingly concerned about human recreational activities. He had just finished showing them videos of various human sports and hobbies. "Let me understand this correctly," said the Valerian ambassador, her crystalline form pulsing with confusion. "These humans are jumping out of perfectly functional flying machines for entertainment. It's called skydiving," Daniel explained, showing them another video of people leaping from planes. "The rush of adrenaline makes it fun. See, they have parachutes to slow their fall." "But what if the parachute fails?" asked an Exotheri representative. "That's why we have backup parachutes," Daniel said cheerfully. "And training. And emergency procedures." The aliens made notes about humans having multiple layers of safety protocols for their dangerous entertainment activities. This was not reassuring to them at all. Daniel moved on to the next video. "This is mountain climbing. People climb up huge rock formations, sometimes in freezing conditions, just to reach the top and see the view. They risk death for a view." A Xarth warrior looked genuinely puzzled. Even their species, known for combat prowess, didn't understand this kind of voluntary risk-taking. "Well, it's about the challenge too," Daniel said, "pushing your limits, testing your skills. Oh, and this version is called free climbing. They don't use safety ropes." Several diplomats had to be excused from the room. "And this," Daniel continued, switching to another video, "is what we call an all-you-can-eat spicy wing challenge. The goal is to eat incredibly spicy chicken wings until you can't handle any more. They willingly consume pain-inducing chemicals." The medical officer checked her translator to make sure it wasn't malfunctioning. "As a competition." "Exactly. The winner gets their picture on the wall and a free t-shirt." The Cultural Affairs Committee had to call a brief recess to process this information. When they returned, Daniel showed them surfing videos. "These humans are riding on waves in an acid ocean," one diplomat asked, horrified. "Oh no, our oceans aren't acid," Daniel corrected. "They're just salt water. Though you do have to watch out for sharks sometimes." "Sharks?" "Yeah, large predatory fish. Most surfers have had at least one shark encounter. It's part of the experience." The committee added another note to their report. "Humans deliberately enter waters containing known predators for recreation." Daniel then explained other common human activities. Marathon running. They run until exhaustion for fun. Roller coasters. Simulated death experiences as entertainment. And hot sauce collecting. They compete to determine who can endure the most pain. By the time he showed them videos of parkour, base jumping, and mixed martial arts competitions, several diplomats were requesting stress relief medication. "But why?" the head of the Cultural Exchange Committee finally asked. "Why do humans seek out these dangerous and painful experiences?" Daniel thought for a moment. "I guess because they're exciting. They make us feel alive. Plus, they're really fun." "Fun," the committee repeated, adding it to their notes. Humans classify near-death experiences as fun. That evening, the Galactic Council updated their species profile on humanity again. Under cultural notes, they added, "Warning. Humans regularly engage in recreational activities that would qualify as survival challenges or military training for most species. They appear to actively seek out dangerous situations for fun and consider pain an acceptable side effect of entertainment." They also added a special advisory. Human recreational activities should not be attempted by other species without extensive safety modifications. What humans consider beginner-friendly activities often qualify as extreme survival challenges for others. As Daniel left the chamber, he checked his watch. He still had time to make it to his weekly rock climbing session. He had tried to invite some of the diplomats along, but strangely, they had all declined. Their loss, he thought. The new route he was trying had some really exciting challenges. Captain Susan Miller stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the biological weapon clouds spread across the colony world of New Eden. The rebel faction of the Exotheri had released what they called their ultimate weapon, an engineered virus that could supposedly kill any living thing. They had expected the human colony to die within hours. Instead, they got to watch something unprecedented. Status report. Susan called out to her medical officer, Dr. Ben Harris. The colonists are getting sick, he replied, checking his screens, but their immune systems are already fighting back. It's like catching a bad flu. No fatalities reported yet. The HFY rebels watched in horror from their ships as their supposedly unstoppable weapon failed to do more than give the human colonists a fever and some sniffles. What they didn't understand was that humans had been fighting viruses since before they learned to make fire. "Ma'am," her communications officer called out, "the rebel leader is demanding to know why we aren't dead." Susan smiled. "Tell them we've had worse colds." The truth was, the human immune system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While other species had evolved to avoid threats, humans had evolved to fight them head-on. Each new challenge just made them stronger. Update from the surface, Ben reported. The colonists' immune systems have identified the virus. Antibodies are being produced. Some people are already showing improvement. The rebels had made a crucial mistake. They had based their weapon on their own understanding of biology, but human bodies didn't follow the same rules. Millions of years of evolution on Earth, fighting everything from common colds to plague, had turned humans into living adaptation machines. "Captain," her science officer called out, "the rebels are preparing to release a second variant of the virus." "Let them," Susan said calmly. "Our immune systems adapt faster than their labs can work." She was right. Each new variant the rebels released was less effective than the last. Human bodies weren't just fighting off the virus. They were learning from it, developing new defenses, becoming stronger. By the third day, most of the colonists were back on their feet. Some had developed complete immunity. The rebel leaders, watching their ultimate weapon fail completely, finally called for talks. "How?" their chief scientist asked during the surrender. "We designed it to be lethal to all known life forms." Susan let Dr. Harris explain. "You designed it based on what you know about life. But Earth life evolved differently. Our bodies don't just defend. They adapt, learn, and grow stronger. What doesn't kill us literally makes us stronger." The Galactic Council, upon receiving the full report, had to create an entirely new classification system. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was the Death World, the planet that had shaped its dominant species into something the galaxy had never seen before. They added new categories to their species database. Adaptation speed, beyond measurable limits. Immune response, maximum plus. Environmental resistance, universal. Threat response, actively beneficial. Species classification, unique. The most remarkable thing, Susan told the council during her debriefing, is that this is just our baseline. We haven't even started to reach our potential in space yet. The council members looked at each other nervously. Humans weren't just survivors. They were adapters. Every challenge made them stronger. Every threat improved them. Every attempt to harm them only revealed new aspects of their capabilities. That day, the galaxy learned a vital lesson. Earth wasn't just the most dangerous death world because of its environment. It was the most dangerous because it had produced a species that thrived on challenges, adapted to threats, and grew stronger from adversity. As Susan left the council chamber, she heard one alien diplomat whisper to another, "Thank the stars, they're friendly." Can you imagine if they weren't? Susan smiled. She could have told them something even more interesting. The humans were already working on ways to improve their adaptability even further. But some things were better left as surprises. After all, humanity was just getting started.